And welcome to QI for another desultory dollop of dumbing up. Our panel tonight is sagacious, prehensile and sharp as a tack. The discriminating David Mitchell. The discursive Andy Hamilton. The dexterous Johnny Sessions. And Alan deep as a D-cup Davis. Tonight the buzzers are all slightly disparaging. David goes... Andy goes... Resign! Resign! Johnny goes... And Alan goes... Which brings us to our first question. Which is the bravest species of animal?
I think it might be the ichneumon. The mongoose.
Yes, please.
Yes. Because the mongoose is basically like a sort of glorified ferret. And it goes out of its way to kill cobras. And cobras can kill you just by looking at you the wrong way. So I think that's pretty brave.
Why does it kill cobras? Because if it can only eat cobra, it's not brave, it's just sensible. It's just, you know...
No, but cobras, you know, they come out of baskets, they sing, they dance. Sort of Les Dennis of the snake world.
Yeah.
Well, they're literally the hoodie of the snake world, aren't they? They've got the little hoods.
They're not that brave, though, because as far as I'm aware, the mongoose nearly always wins. I've never seen a David Attenborough where he suddenly goes, oh dear, the mongoose has copped it. What's difficult about this question, I think, is you need some kind of comparative unit of bravery, I think.
And we have one. How do we show how brave people are in a graded order? Soldiers,
Medals.
for example. Medals?
Right.
There are bound to be loads of horses and dogs that have been ridiculously given medals
Pigeons.
if they understood what they were doing at
Pigeons
all.
get them, they get medals for making
I'm going to give you the points, Alan. You said pigeons, didn't you? Pigeons.
Yes. Points?
Yes, pigeons mean points.
Brilliant.
Maria Dickin, who founded the People's Dispensary for Sick Animals. In 1943, she instituted a medal called the Dickin, which is the equivalent of a Victoria Cross for animals that serve in the armed forces.
She sounds really bonkers.
Yeah.
The thing is, if you start giving the animals medals, you've got to start promoting the animals, and then at some point you get a pigeon in charge of the whole army.
To be brave, you need to know the element of risk. So I reckon probably the bravest is something like a robin, because I've seen robins mob cats. You know, that's the equivalent of us running towards...
Is this as in Batman?
A tiger.
Well, because that's just not fair, is it?
No, that's...
Well, anyway, the Dickin Medal has been awarded 60 times, and 32 times it's gone to a pigeon. Once to a cat on board HMS Amethyst. The Yangtze incident.
Yangtze incident in 1949.
The entire crew saved by a cat.
Yeah.
Well, he'd ate all the rats on ship.
That's not bravery, though. That's just greed.
It is really, isn't it, to be burning on.
At Moggy. Medal?
Yes, the answer is carrier pigeons, as in D for doves. The London pigeon is a dove, and it's known as the wild rock dove, and is the ancestor of all doves and pigeons. Really? The doves that won the Dickin Medal were, strictly speaking, non-combatants, and that's not true of all military pigeons. I wonder if you can imagine what a kamikaze pigeon unit did.
Fly into things, fly into planes, engines.
You're getting there. It's a very complicated...
Fly down guns.
It's a man...
Nest. Terrible nuisance to get out.
It was to fly at ships, but in a very particular way, inside a missile. It's got a window, right? No, I'll explain it to you. Here's a pigeon. I've got a pigeon here. Voila. And I have a ship. Yeah. And you train the pigeon to peck at a ship. And every time it does, it's rewarded with grain. Then you put it inside its missile with a glass front, right? And a ship comes into view, but it's slightly on the left. Well, the pigeon's behavioural response is to peck towards where it is. And this activates a relay. And as it gets nearer the ship and it gets bigger and bigger, it pecks more and more and more and more and more, which tells them that they're on the right track. They get really, really close and it explodes in a ball of flame. Destroying...
And that's the thanks it gets.
That's the thanks. It maybe gets showered with grain at the last second, just as a thank you, who knows. But it's a guidance system.
Did it work?
It wasn't used.
Right.
But what they did, using this man Skinner, this behavioural psychologist's experiments, was they got a bit of glass, and instead of having a target on it or anything like that, it was just a plain piece of glass with an orange dot on it. And every time the pigeon hit the dot exactly like that, it would get rewarded. Can you imagine why that would be useful?
I was thinking about this just the other day. It's funny you said it.
Very slow form of execution for someone. You put an orange dot on them, put a pigeon in the room, you could activate 12 years.
No, pigeons have very good eyesight, and if an air rescue helicopter is searching the sea and someone's in a little orange dinghy or in an orange life jacket, the pigeon will always see it as a little dot in its screen, so let's go like that, thinking it's going to get fed, and that will alert the pilot, and it works. And that's beneficial, and no one dies. Someone might even get saved.
Yes.
And then you eat the pigeon on the way back. The passenger pigeon, is that a familiar species to any of you? It's one of the saddest stories. There were flocks of them in America, and I'm not kidding, that were 1 mile wide and 300 miles long. That would have 2 billion of these birds. They were just the most extraordinary sight in nature, probably.
So they're shitting whole hills.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you imagine?
Caught under that, you are dead.
You are seriously dead. In 1896, they killed the final flock of 250,000 in one day, knowing it was the last American sportsman, and I use the word sport quite wrongly.
Did you know about the Puccini gun? The composer Puccini
Yes.
was a great shooter of birds, as a lot of Italians are. When I was in his house at Torre del Lago, there was the Puccini gun, which he made himself, and he'd be sitting there writing, you know, lovely opera, and he'd hear a snipe outside the window. He'd grab this thing, which had the bore on it like a drain pipe, and he could bring down 50 snipe in one go.
Oh, you see, that sport is Italian. Italians, Americans, I mean, really. That's horrible. But can you imagine that? And then on one day, knowing you're wiping out an entire species to kill 250,000 birds in a day.
Did they know it was the last
Yes.
250,000? And they sort of
They
thought,
knew.
fantastic, let's finish them off.
That was the last flock, and then the last bird itself died in the Cincinnati Zoo in 1914. She was called Martha.
So that the pigeons in Trafalgar Square, they're wild rock pigeons.
Wild rock doves.
Wild rock doves.
Yeah.
Do they know that? Because you don't tend to see them on the cliffs at Beachy Head.
They're confused by our rock cliffs, aren't they? That's the problem. Pablo Picasso was a keen pigeon fancier.
His father was a painter of pigeons. It was a style in late 19th century Malaga. Instead of, like, flower genre painting in France, whatever, his father was a pigeoniana, or whatever it was called. And when he discovered how good his son was, he gave him his brushes and never painted again.
Fantail pigeons he collected himself, and of course he called his daughter
Paloma.
which is
Of course.
Spanish for a dove or pigeon.
Indeed.
Una paloma blanca. You
Yes.
remember. There we are. B.F. Skinner was the name of the man who designed these missiles aimed by pigeons who were tapping in the nose, and it was tested successfully, but never actually saw action. Arthur Garfield Dove. He was a painter, regarded by many as the first abstract painter in America. He was a friend and associate of the subject of our next question, which is, what practical use can you think of for the work of art which the Turner Prize Committee voted as the most influential modern work ever?
You'd sleep in it.
You'd sleep in it.
Was it Marcel Duchamp's urinal, which has the obvious usage of being a urinal?
Pissing in it.
Yeah,
basically.
pissing in it, yeah.
Is the right answer, yes. There it is. It's a 1917 work entitled Fountain. It's worth $3.6 million. It's signed R. Mutt. R is for Richard, which is a kind of French slang, as well as being a name, means money bags. It's upside down.
Is it?
Can I also point out it's not plumbed in to anything?
So
Personally, I wouldn't piss in it.
Many artists have pissed in it when it's been on display as either a statement of hatred for it or a support of it, and that one was fined $6,500.
Someone's paid $3 million for that.
It's reckoned to be worth $3.5 million. The Steigert's Gallery.
As works of art go, it's going to do less damage pissing in that than, say, pissing on the Mona Lisa, though, isn't
Exactly,
it?
yeah. So Marcel Duchamp famously did a Mona Lisa with a moustache and goatee. Dove and Duchamp were both members of the Dada movement, as we're on D's. Talking of repetitious D words, what did the Dick do that the Dodo didn't?
It flew.
It flew? Oh, no, it didn't.
It tasted disgusting.
Oddly enough, the opposite, probably. Right. Do you know what a Dick is? That would help.
Yes, it's a little gazelle kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Can it climb trees?
No. It's a tiny antelope.
Can hide in bushes?
It's about the size of a hare.
Is it extinct?
No, it's not extinct.
I noticed that's a photo.
Exactly.
Using my skills as a historian.
Top work. Yes. And that means it could survive, and it survived because it could hide. It didn't really run so much. They hide, they live at night, and they're very, very shy. And dodos, unfortunately...
Dodos like that. All right!
Yeah, exactly.
Come on in, get off the boat, bring your gun.
They made a very...
Exactly right.
Help you carry that.
It's true. Mauritius is where they came from. And the rats, pigs, dogs and humans that arrived in the 17th century, as you say, it just was not afraid of them because there were no ground-level predators on the entire island, so it had no reason to be distrustful. Whereas Dik-Diks in Africa, of course, had lions and things to contend with and were very, very shy.
So essentially sounds quite brave.
It was, but maybe the dodo...
It's the bravest animal, and the Dik-Diks are bloody coward, and they're still hanging around, you know, posing for photos.
Do you know what sort of animal it is? What it's related to?
Turkey.
It's a pigeon. Actually,
Is that pigeon?
It doesn't look like one.
Should
But
have
it is a
known it
pigeon.
was a dove.
And it was entirely forgotten until 1860s, roughly. Suddenly everybody was talking about dodos again because they appeared in a book, a very famous book.
It's Alice in Wonderland.
Alice in Wonderland. Give yourself some points for that, absolutely. And it's around that time that dead as a dodo seemed to become a popular phrase. Yes. From Dik-Diks to Moby Dick, who is a sperm whale, of course. A sperm whale's penis, as I think we may have covered even in the first series, is 9 foot long and 1 foot in diameter. What uses can you think of for Moby's dick?
Way ahead of you.
You've been thinking about this.
No,
Sitting up it.
Sitting up it. I remember reading somewhere that when Maria Callas first went aboard Onassis' yacht...
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say Onassis' his cock.
And apparently the bar stools on his yacht, the Christina,
Were made out
the
of
seats
sperm
were made
whales'
out of
knob.
sperm whales' prepuces, or foreskins.
Did they kill a whale for each one, or did they just swim under and circumcise?
Well, there's a full description in the novel Moby Dick by Helen Melville.
Oh, they turn it into millions of things.
No, odd enough, one thing. It's quite an interesting description. A sailor called a mincer who comes along and he takes...
Found this. They dragged it behind the boat and they all sat astride it. Taking it in turns. It was €10.
Well, apparently, he staggers off with it as if he were a grenadier carrying a dead comrade from the field. Then he extends it upon the forecastle deck, and he proceeds cylindrically to remove the dark pelt, the outer skin of it, the slidey bit that goes up and down, I guess. This done, he turns it inside out, he gives it a good stretching, so as to almost double the diameter, so it's now 2 foot wide, but still 9 foot tall.
So it wasn't big enough.
Right, exactly. And then he hangs it well spread in the rigging to dry, right? Ere long, it is taken down, and when removing some 3 foot of it, so it's now about 6 foot, but 2 foot wide.
Waistcoat.
He cuts a couple of armholes and makes an apron.
Yeah.
There you are. And there's your mincer. He now stands before you invested in the full canonicals.
Do you like my apron? Yes, I quite like your apron. How do you get... Well, it's the easiest thing in the world. What I did is I sperm whale's cock off, dragged it onto a ship, skinned it, hung it inside out, hung it up at the top of the rigging for ages. I don't believe that air long. I mean, it's not going to dry out if the weather's bad. And then you've got yourself an apron. Surely there are easier ways of making an apron.
Not in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, there aren't.
Well, mate, well, you should bring them with you. I mean, if he got a TV out of it, that would be great. You can understand the effort.
Does it have a bone in it?
Like a badger.
Yeah, a badger has a bone in it.
Badger has a bone in its cock, yes.
That's not suitable for apron making, then. That's a bigger job, isn't it?
You could make an apron for a
squirrel.
For a wasp. Squirrel, maybe.
So much for Moby Dick, who rode from London to York in 15 hours.
It was Dick Turpin?
Oh, no, it wasn't. No, you fell into our little heffalump trap again. No, it was a man called Swift Nick Nevinson. Swift Nick Nevinson was a rather splendid highwayman, and he never hurt people. He was charming and he was very popular. He held people up in Gad's Hill in Kent and then rode like fury 200 miles to York, where he went into a bowling match with the mayor of York, and he bet him on the outcome of the match, so that when 2 days later the police came to arrest him, he could use the mayor as an alibi. And the mayor said, no, he was playing bowls with me, because no one can imagine that you could get from Kent to York in 15 hours. And the latest news here from my little screen is sperm whales do have bones in their penises. I get very odd text messages sometimes. It's wanted to know. But Swift Nick was given his name by Charles II himself. But why did Dick Turpin get the name for being the one who rode to York? He did ride to York, but he took a long time over it.
On Black Bess.
It was on Black Bess.
From Epping Forest, where he lived for a bit.
He did live in Epping Forest.
There's a
You're getting
nightclub
points.
called Turpin's. It was closed down because someone got glassed.
But unfortunately, unlike Nevinson, he would torture old women and little girls for money.
He was no Robin Hood. They tried to dress him up like that in Epping Forest.
But it was a man called Harrison Ainsworth, the novelist, who in 1834 wrote Rookwood, exactly. You get a point for muttering Rookwood under your breath there. First time you've muttered under your breath, and it's actually meant something. Still, there we are. And he, for some reason, attributed all Nevinson's deeds to Dick Turpin.
How did Nevinson, if we know that he never hurt anyone in any of his robberies, how did he get on as a highwayman? Because surely, did he have to pretend he wasn't Nevinson? No, actually, I'm Dick Turpin, I'm a real shit. No, you're not, you're that Nevinson, you're not going to do anything. Oh, no, I know, but please, just give me the stuff anyway.
Do you know how Turpin got arrested? What actually happened? It was a really bizarre story, really.
Tax fraud, wasn't it?
It wasn't tax fraud. No, he went to live in York and changed his name to John Palmer. He did a bit of cattle rustling, but he did get arraigned for shooting his landlord's cock after a jolly day out hunting, and the authorities didn't know who he really was. So he wrote to his brother-in-law for a character reference. But his brother-in-law turned the letter away because he sought from John Palmer. And in those days, you had to pay sixpence to receive the letter. And he said, I don't know this person, so I'm not going to pay for it. And it went back to the postmaster, who happened to be the person who taught Dick Turpin to read and write. And he recognised Dick Turpin's handwriting and grasped him up. Sticked him up like a kipper. I do all the characters. And then to make matters worse, the hangman was an ex-partner of his, who, in exchange for a pardon, had agreed to become a hangman.
There were only 12 people in England at that time.
Tim Spall's new film has just come out about Albert Pierpoint.
Yes.
He opened a pub called The Struggling Man. And he got it down to 7 seconds, apparently, Pierpoint. From leaving the cell to the prisoner being dead, 7 seconds.
Do you put them on roller skates?
Even if you had...
One of those rope slides. Put this around your neck, would you?
Do you know, if you're an American black youth living in Compton, Watts, various other of those sort of neighbourhoods of ghettos in the worst parts of America, and you shoot someone in cold blood and are given the death penalty as a result of it, you will have a longer life than if you don't.
Because the life expectancy is so
the life
low.
expectancy on the streets is lower than on death row.
But does that mean that they go out to shoot people to prolong their lives?
A friend of mine's a cameraman, and he was doing a documentary in Los Angeles, and he became friends with a policeman whom he'd been interviewing. And he said, well, come up in my helicopter, because he needed aerial shots of LA, and it's very expensive to hire a helicopter for the day. So he went up in this helicopter going over LA, and he said, "You've got a weird, is it your GPS system, the thing that goes ping all the time?" He says, "No, that's bullets hitting the bottom of the helicopter. They have reinforced metal underneath it. They see a police helicopter, they just shoot it all the time."
That's because there are no more passenger pigeons. That's what it is.
Ping, 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 all the time. So, this puts us firmly in the saddle of general ignorance. Fingers on triggers, please. What crime was committed by Burke and Hare?
The body snatching.
Oh! Thank you for falling into it. No. There was a more serious capital crime that they committed, and that was simply murder.
Murder.
They actually cut out the bit where you actually wait for someone to die, snatch their body, give it to a doctor. They actually killed 16 people and took the bodies to a doctor called Knox, who didn't ask questions, for his dissection.
This body snatching was quite popular, wasn't it?
Oh, yes, they called them the resurrection men.
Part of the black economy in those days.
Yeah,
Was just...
so there was a lot of dissection going on.
Yeah.
In fact, now they don't do it. Computers and things, medical students don't really get the chance to cut open a body.
Really?
There was an awful story of the medical students, and they used to remove the penis from a body, and they went to a party, and this chap attached it to his trousers, and a woman came up to him and said, "What are you doing? Your penis is hanging out your trousers." And he said, "Oh, is it?" And he cut it off. and she collapsed. She fainted.
Barry Humphries, when he was a drinker, used to do this thing. He used to have a spoon and a little jar of Heinz sandwich spread in his jacket, and on a flight he would start getting very queasy, and he'd ask for a sick bag, like that, into the bag like that, and then he'd secretly fill it with sandwich spread, and then he'd take his spoon out and he'd just throw out.
That is simply showing off.
That's enough Burke and Hare. Another question. What sort of hair does an underground fluffer deal with?
Is it anything to do with the tube? Is it underground as in...
Is the right answer. You avoided our trap. Nothing to do with films and pornography or anything.
Is it to do with cleaning the rails?
Cleaning the rails,
Gangs of 6 every night go down, gather up the hair. 30-mile-an-hour winds come when a train enters the station, and a lot of hair gets blown down into the tunnels. Really?
Yeah, that's how I lost mine, actually. Most of it is Tottenham Court Road.
And it's statically attracted to the rail, is it?
Well, it's a prime cause of fire.
I don't understand why you can't have, you know, like you used to have a cleaning tape for your cassette deck.
Yes.
Why you can't have a cleaning tube? You just send a big furry train down.
Well, that's the fluffers. What's happened to fluffers in the porn industry?
They're no longer used.
Yes, why would that be?
I wish... David, why is that? Porn industry, I feel it's your question.
It's a VAT issue.
Health and safety as well, I think.
It's something else beginning with V. Viagra. Done them out of business. The fluffer, for those who don't know, was the person in a porn film whose job it was to excite the membrum virile of the male artiste.
And then turn it into an apron.
That's it. Yes, fluffers clean the tracks, they save lives, and they stop trains running late. It's a really tough and underappreciated job, and I think they deserve a round of applause from us. Hooray! Now, whose official motto is a pluribus unum?
It's not the Four Musketeers or something like that.
No, it's on the Great Seal of the United States of America. A pluribus unum. It means out of many, one. But it's actually the motto of Benfica. Sport Lisboa Benfica. We thought you'd say United States of America because we thought it was quite well known.
A little bit too far ahead of me now. I know where Benfica is.
Yes, where is it?
It's in Lisbon.
It is in Lisbon, absolutely right.
Eusebio was their star player. There's a statue of him outside the ground.
I remember.
He was from Mozambique.
America's is In God We Trust, actually. It used to be a pluribus unum. They changed it in 1956 to In God We Trust.
That's when it all started.
I'm afraid so. But you obviously don't watch Who Wants to Be a Celebrity Millionaire or Celebrity Who Wants to Be a Millionaire or Who Celebrity B Wants a
It takes
Celebrity...
too long to answer the questions. You've got to have it on Sky Plus and then you can fast forward.
Yeah, I do agree with that. When he stops to talk to them, who cares?
Shut up, Terence. Just ask a foxy question.
Yes, on with it.
It's B. It's obviously B.
Anyway... Lawrence Llewellyn Bowen.
Got £500,000 quid.
Yes, but he went to the million, and he was asked the question of what motto of the United States is translated from the Latin, and he gave the answer, "In God We Trust," which is the motto of the United States, but it isn't translated from Latin. And he lost £468,000 and went back to 32,000. And then they thought they'd made a bit of a bish because it's the motto of the United States is not E pluribus unum, which is what they had given as one of the other answers. So he was invited back the next week, apparently.
They gave him the money back. They gave him the £500,000.
Yes. Exactly. The phrase "e pluribus unum" actually comes from a recipe for salad dressing attributed to Virgil. No, color est e pluribus unus, and so on. It goes on like that. That's where they first found the phrase. That was actually going to be the bonus question, and I f***ed it up completely. Never mind.
Someone's weeing on the salad, which is great.
So they are. How bizarre.
Maybe
Salvador
I
Dali.
believe they call it drizzling in the trade.
Maybe it's a work of art.
Yes. Well, they've asked me to ask the question again. All right. So, for 50 bonus points... That's so sweet. For 50 bonus points, which completely turned the game round, after all, this late stage. What was "e pluribus unum" originally?
What was it,
I
Alan?
think it comes from a salad dressing or something. A recipe. It's a recipe. It's something from a recipe for salad.
Oh, dear, oh, dear, oh, dear. They are so sweet. Brilliant. I don't know how you knew that. Well, it will confuse the viewer at home.
One of those things you know, but you don't know how you know it. There's a lot of space in my head for those things.
Well, you're absolutely right. I'm very impressed. It was an early kind of Latin salsa verde or pesto. Which brings us to the delicious matter of the scores. Out of the many, we have one winner. So in reverse order, in last place, just with -9, is David Mitchell. Well played. And in third place with -8, Andy Hamilton. In second place with -4 is John Sessions. Do my eyes deceive me, ladies and gentlemen? In first place with 54 points is Alan Davis. Wow! The amazing thing is, we would have won even without that bonus.
One of the happiest days of my life.
Well, it's a happy day whenever you're here. And my thanks go to our other happies, Andy, David, John and Alan. And I leave you now to mull on the complex moral implications of the tragic tale of 4 carrier pigeons that landed in a Canadian army trench during the First World War. The Canadians ate 3 of them and used the 4th to send a thank you letter. Good night.
Science Fiction Britannia continues tomorrow on BBC4 with this year's remake of A for Andromeda at 8:30.